Stick around and I'll show you how I get downward transitions on just ride 4 on Bonnys Six Shooter. Welcome back to Becky, Amio Horse Training, and this is ride number 4 on Bonnys Six Shooter. Thanks for joining me, you guys. If you haven't seen the first 3 rides, I encourage you to go back and watch and see how they develop over the last 3. Now, in this particular session, I have changed my saddle. Now, this is the saddle that tends to fit more of my colts. I do most of my colt riding in it, and you know, the saddle that I start them in, that's generally my first ride saddle. And I've done a video talking about, you know, what I use for first rides and, you know, why it's so important as a rider to be confident and comfortable in the piece of equipment that you're using for that first ride. And, you know, I always try to take the horse's comfort and security and confidence into my concern when I'm making my choices on what I'm going to prepare them with and what they're going to wear for their rides. But that first ride, it's always the most important ride where I need to feel super confident as well. And the saddle that I had been riding him in was the saddle that I have the most confidence with when I'm doing a first ride on a colt. So I ride that for a few rides, and then once I'm pretty comfortable with the particular colt that I'm starting, I'll switch to this saddle because I know it fits the colt better. I don't get as much security as this saddle as I do in the previous one, but I make do, and I have to adjust my riding accordingly to accommodate the horse's comfort. And they always perform better when they're in a piece of equipment that they are comfortable in, that's not pinching or hurting or too wide or, you know, rubbing them the wrong way, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to go through all of my mounting and dismounting and putting weight in the stirrup all over again, just like I would as if this were the very first ride. And I would encourage you guys to do the same thing. Anytime you change a piece of equipment on your horse, whether it be trying a new cinch, a new saddle pad, a different saddle, a different bit, I would always encourage you to go back to square one, to the very basics, and like you're retraining them all over again and do all the things that they already know how to do to develop their confidence in that piece of equipment. So I go ahead and flex his head both directions, and he was kind of wanting to rest a hind leg there for a little bit, and I went ahead and asked him to walk off. And so now immediately he's kind of feeling less of a pinch over his shoulders, and he's freed up a little bit, and he's able to walk off. Now, I know this seems really boring and uneventful, but that's the way it should be in order to create repetition and to teach these horses properly. Take the time that it takes to teach the lesson and go through it every single time you work with them. And in this instance right here, why he's kind of refusing is because we just passed the gate there and he's wanting to leave. He's kind of sick of being in the round pen, as I am. But I was up against a wall here trying to find somebody to go out and video me riding out, and I couldn't get somebody to video me out, so I had to stick with the pivo for another day and set it up to follow me around here in the round pen. And I'm going to go right into an emergency stop here to walk. Check all of the systems and make sure they're working properly before we take off on this aircraft, right? So again, back to everything being kind of boring and mundane. I'm sharing this with you guys because I want you to see the process that I take, the trigger stacking that I do to create the colts that I do. It's not rocket science. It's a system of trigger stacking, very specific cues. Everything that I do means something, and I'm working towards having a safe ride with this horse over and over and over again, and I'm developing him for the rest of his life. What I do right now in his foundation is going to help him 10 years from now, and the foundation that's put on a 2-year-old colt is the most important thing you could possibly do for it. I have a saying, called, you can't cram for the final on these guys. So if you do your homework right in the very beginning stages, that's going to support you much later on in these horses' lives, whether you go on to compete on them, show them, trail ride them. You know, they're going to go on to make good decisions because of the foundation that you put on them in these beginning stages, versus trying to cram and make them safe in the event that, you know, when you're in the middle of having a problem. So I try to work on that now in the very, very beginning. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a couple more emergency stops here. He's sulking up a little bit more coming past this gate. I know he wants out. These big horses that are raised out like this, they get sick of the round pen pretty quick. And the only reason we're still in here with Shooter is, you know, because I couldn't find somebody to video me. And, you know, he has a little bit more forward than some of the other horses that I work on in here. I've been known to go out on a first ride on stuff that just didn't have enough forward because they felt claustrophobic in this small round pen. If I have an emergency stop on one, I'm totally confident to ride it out across the pasture safely. He's starting to move out a little bit more for me, and if you notice, I kind of let him go a little bit further before I put him into an emergency stop, where like in the beginning, you know, we wouldn't get but 5 strides and then emergency stop, and then maybe halfway around the round pen and then emergency stop. This, now I'm starting to let him go like maybe a whole lap before I put him in one, but I kind of want this colt always thinking about stop, and I want to keep his attention on me. You know, he is really sensitive to outside stimuli, so I definitely want to keep his attention on what's going on in here. But yeah, I just I go through all the same drills that I do from the very beginning, and getting him used to this saddle is just as much getting me used to riding him in this saddle. Even though this is my main saddle, I've ridden in for 5 years now. It always feels different on a new horse, and so I have to get used to that feel on that horse. So part of this is just as much for me as it is for him, and I don't think people take enough of that into account when they're changing equipment around and how stuff feels. And so again, we just go back and forth, emergency stops, pick up a trot, change direction, bend him around, pet and rub all over him. Whenever we can get Shooter to lower his neck and head long and low, it's a good day. And we don't get that too often if you've been following much. I'm going to go ahead and let him walk out right now and let him play some game over. This ride is a little bit longer because I incorporate some game over with him, and in between some of these drills and some of these new techniques and skills that I work on with him, I give him kind of a long walk in between to think about it. And, you know, I'm not doing all of those emergency stops as much as I was in the very beginning. Like in the very beginning, it was 3 one direction, 3 the other direction, 3, 3, 3. Where this way, it's more like, okay, we got a couple that way and we got one that way. We're doing all right. But we're still addressing and practicing these every single ride, and I can't emphasize that enough. I think a lot of people don't practice stopping their horse, and you never know when you're going to need it. You know what I mean? So another reason I changed saddles was because I felt like he was kind of wanting to hop up in the hind end when I was asking for a lope, and I wanted to see if it was saddle related. And he's kind of getting really sulky again here, you know, just kind of wanting to suck back a little bit, getting pretty collected and light in his hind end here. And I think this is pretty much telling me that he's kind of done with being in the round pen more so than it was a saddle problem. But that was my concern, and that's why I changed that before I came into this ride, is because that's what I was starting to feel. So a new game that I taught him starting in our last ride was the drop to trot lead change. So going to the right now, I'm going to tell him easy, break him down to a trot, start the bend to the right and guide him across the middle of the arena. I'll drop that right rein and then guide with my left to pick up the new lead going to the left. Now the pivot loses us a little bit here. I apologize for the shakiness. But you can see me guide him into a starting of a circle, drop that rein, guide him off to the left, and pick up the left lead going the new direction. Now, another game that I like to play with this, because they'll start to anticipate that change of direction, just like they'll anticipate a flying lead change down the road in their training. I will ask him for the drop to trot, and I'll circle them, and then pick up the same lead again here. So it's a good little game to play. They can't quite lope that circle yet across the middle of the arena, or a smaller circle than the size of this round pen. So breaking them down to a trot, they trot a circle, they stay on that same lead, pick up the same lead going this direction. And I'll do that a few times just to break up the monotony and kind of eliminate that anxiety, anticipating the new lead going across the middle there. Now, something else I want to point out to you here is one of the cues that I'm giving to break him down to the trot, and this is directly from the emergency stop. I'll go up his neck with one rein, but I won't complete the emergency stop transition here. So you see me go forward with this hand, you see slack in that rein, and I tell him easy, and he breaks down to a trot on his own. I'm not pulling back on these reins to make this horse stop or slow down. Isn't that cool? So that is where my transitions are coming from. That's where the stop is coming from, because he's expecting to do that emergency stop, and I don't complete the entire process, and I just break him down to a trot, and then ask him to move off again, and then we pick up the lope again, going the same direction. Now that he's really starting to think about slowing down and stopping, I'm going to go ahead and give him the halt command here. Left rein forward and back, right rein forward and back, and then pull straight back at the same time. And he was already thinking about stopping. He came to the stop on his own. And I'm going to stand here and just let him sit there and think about it. Sometimes the best reward and the best release for these horses is just letting them stand there and kind of think about it and catch their breath, especially with something that's kind of been loping. He's getting a little bit tired. When he drops his head and lowers his neck like that, we know Shooter has got it. So I go ahead and walk him off, and this is a great opportunity now to play game over with him. Long, loose rein. I've ridden him down a little bit, and so I'm pretty confident that he's just going to walk around quietly and catch his breath. And now when you walk around like this, you have an opportunity here to still train on them, even though you're kind of not training on them, like training, not training. As you walk around, he's learning to get quiet, that what we were doing was just a game. It's no big deal. When I drop the reins, it's time to go long and low, catch your breath. And then I'm going to take this opportunity here to practice on his steering, give him the cue to make a turn to the right, and you see me bump him here with my left foot kind of towards that shoulder. And so this is how we start to develop teaching them how to steer without reins, is we bump with that leg, and then if they don't respond right away, we can pull with that rein just a little bit and help guide them, and bump with that leg at the same time. And they'll start putting it all together on their own, you guys. You wouldn't believe what they learn when they're just walking around catching their breath and so-called not being trained on right now. So I'm going to bump them with my right leg. Start the turn to the left, move away from pressure, and then open my hand up with that left rein. As soon as he goes that direction, hot potato, drop that rein. That's his release. And then he knows, okay, I got it. I went the direction she wanted me to. Okay, so now that he's caught his breath and we've had an opportunity to practice changing directions a few times, we're going to go ahead and take our trot again and then pick up a lope. We're going to work on breaking down to a trot and circling, and then going back to the rail and picking up a lope again. And we're going to see some pretty cool shutdowns here where he down regulates and decelerates rapidly. It's really neat, and I'm going to break it down for you guys in slow motion and show you what's happening, because now that this colt is really starting to think about slowing down and he's starting to think about stopping, it's making a difference in our training now. So right here, I barely give him the cue to break down to a trot. You see my hand go forward, and in the next stride, this sucker's breaking down to a trot. He's getting underneath himself. He's starting to use his hind end, and then he goes right into a trot stride, and I'm able to take him right into a circle and trot him around in a circle about half the size of the round pen here. I can put him back on the rail, and then take off and elope again. So look at all the stuff that this colt has learned in just this session. We're working on trot to canter transitions, canter to trot transitions, or lope to trot, whatever vocabulary you choose to use. He's getting quiet. He is learning how to down regulate. He's learned the cue to transition down just by going forward with that rein rather than pulling back on that rein. And he fusses a little bit right there in his circle, and they're going to because they're not balanced yet, okay? They're not balanced in that circle yet, so they're going to fuss a little bit with their face, and you're going to see sometimes an ugly face or two when they're still learning how to do it and gain their balance. And I just barely go up his neck with that hand. He breaks down to a trot for me. I can guide him in this circle here and then put him right back on the rail and ask for a lope again. Because let's be real, he can't lope that circle yet, so let's not set him up for failure and try to lope that circle, but he sure can trot it. So that's why we're breaking him down to the trot. And so how many times now have we picked up this right lead now? Look at all the practice he's gotten picking up the correct lead for the direction that we're going. And again, I'll stop, I'll let him rest, I'll let him think about it for a little while. Anytime Shooter can lower that neck and head is a good day for us, and get him relaxed, pet on him a little bit, and go on to the next job. So while I've got him here, I think I'm going to go ahead and practice backing up just randomly in the middle of our session. Look at here, we're starting to get it. He was nice and soft there for a second. Only a teeny bit of resistance, but you know what? We'll take it. I will take whatever this horse will give me. So I'm going to go ahead and play game over with him for a little bit, and then I'm going to move on to working the other direction. But, if you guys have been following Shooter for any length of time, you will know that he does not handle very long sessions very well. I've had to kind of choose my battles with him, and I have figured out that he does not like a very long session, and he doesn't really like multiple sessions in a row. He does much better for me if I can keep him short and sweet and stretch him out a couple days at a time. And right now, this colt is just kind of turning over his spirit to me. He's being really quiet. He's really agreeable, and he's letting me train on him. And if you've done enough of these, you'll know that some horses let you train on them, and some of them don't. They kind of get frustrated and mad, and they either get crabby and they go to, doing naughty things, or they just want to be ridden out and they don't want to be picked at. And Shooter is kind of letting me train on him right now, so I'm going to go ahead and go with it. And that's one of the reasons why this video is so long and this particular ride was so long, is because Shooter just let me keep training on him. And so I'm going to play some game over with him, and I'm going to, ride and guide here and, tap him on the shoulder with my foot and then guide him with my rein, just, little bits of getting him to move away from pressure before I start the next game. Okay, so while we're playing game over, we can start working on a new game, and we're going to do rollaways at a walk. So up his neck, down my inside rein, which is, now my inside rein is going to be that right rein against the rail. He didn't quite understand what I was asking of him, and there wasn't a whole lot of room over there. He got a little nervous. I don't put any pressure on him. Just let him follow his nose around. No big deal. Don't make a big deal about it. They won't think it's a very big deal either. We're going to watch one that's really close up here that you'll see me do back to the left here. I put my reins in my right hand, reach out with my left, bend his head, commit with my shoulders, release as soon as he commits and goes the other direction. Let's watch it in slow motion. Look around, bend down, bend that head, and we're asking him to keep moving in this case. We're not taking this rein to our thigh like we would in an emergency stop. And as soon as he commits to go that direction, I release the rein. See how quickly that releases? Let's watch one from the other direction, right up close like this. These are great examples right here. I'm glad the Pivo got me up this close like this. So to the right, up his neck, bend with that right rein, commit, turn in my body, look, step into my outside stirrup, release, and he's committed to going back the opposite direction. These are rollaways on extension. Nice quiet reins. I'm riding both reins in one hand right now on the fourth ride. Long loose rein. He's super quiet. He's starting to get a little irritated by the bugs there, but that's all right. He's still walking quiet for me. Bend him back the other direction. And again, he's kind of played out a little bit, but he's still letting me train on him. And I'm just going to use the opportunity to practice this stuff at a walk. And he's staying quiet, so I'm going to take it. And the more you can put of these together in a row, the faster he's going to learn it. You don't have to go an entire lap around the arena. You can do just a few strides. Send your reins up his neck, bend his head around, and roll him back into the fence. And you keep on doing it consistently the same way because they're all triggers. When we initially triggered him by bending him into an emergency stop, that was the beginning for all of these maneuvers that I'm showing you guys right now. So let's do it at a trot. And now the other difference between bending them like this on extension and rolling them away from that lead that they're on is that I'm using my outside leg to encourage them to move away from pressure. If I were bending him into a complete stop, like an emergency stop, I wouldn't be using that leg. My legs would not be encouraging more movement. They would be just holding on to him and asking him to stop. So this way he wanted to take a lope, we'll take it. He wants to be really super collected, I'll go ahead and take it from him. I'm going to bend him again here shortly and take him back the other direction. Nice and easy. Release as soon as he commits to the direction he's going and he follows his nose. And he wants to stay in a trot here, that's fine. I'm kind of letting him go whatever speed he wants to go. Bend him back the other way. You know, this is a great game in getting them to follow their nose, move their shoulders, commit to going a direction. They're listening to leg, they're speeding up, they're slowing down. You don't realize how much the speeding up and slowing down is something that gets them really tired really quickly. Keeping them going the same pace all the time, it just, you kind of end up just creating an athlete there, and they kind of check out. So when you're asking them to slow down and speed up, not only do they physically have to adjust and pay attention and adjust their body and hold themselves together and balance, but mentally it's very draining as well. And, you know, that's all part of the work. And here he resists a little bit. That's the whole point of doing it over and over and over again, is working through that resistance. And he wants to take a lope on the right lead, we'll take it. Again, he's nice and soft. He's on a loose rein. I'm not trying to hold him back. I don't have a death grip on his face. You know, he's super quiet and he's super collected in everything that he does. That time I had to kick him just a little bit with that right leg to have him follow it, but that's what I'm talking about there. If we were doing an emergency stop, we would not have kicked with that outside leg at all, okay, folks? Okay, so now I can really feel him starting to play out, and the next one, I'm going to call it quits with him, and he's really looking for the stop here. He's really looking to get quiet. I roll him into the rail, and he just walks off quietly on his own. Where the other times, remember, he trotted out or he loped out. And, you know, this time he walks out and he kind of wants to just stop, and that's fine. We'll let him do that. I keep on rubbing all over him. He grabbed his butt there for a second. No big deal. I keep on rubbing on him. He wants to go long and low in that neck. He's resting a hind leg. All super, super good things in Shooter's life. He's really quiet. I'm petting on him a lot. And I'm going to go ahead, when I play game over now, just to cool him out, I'm going to go ahead and play with my rope a little bit. I need to go back to working with the rope again. In the very first few sessions like this, we always have to force ourselves to go back to the rope. And I think I've told you guys, I am not the best rope handler, but I try to get these horses exposed to the rope as much as I possibly can in these beginning stages, because then it's just another thing and it has nothing to do with them. They learn quickly that it's just about the rope. It's not anything that has to do with them. It doesn't mean anything to them right now. It's just, oh, they're swinging something off my back. There's just another piece of equipment up there. And all I really want them to do is either stand there or walk around quietly while I swing it and throw it and coil it back up again. I think that's kind of the best way to get him used to this thing. Usually, if they're really spooked by it, just getting them to stand still is when I release the pressure and I stop playing with the rope. If somebody doesn't want to stand still and keep their feet still, he's obviously pretty quiet about it. He doesn't care much about it, and he's ready to call it a day. So I'm going to use that to my advantage, and I'm going to keep on playing with it for a little while. And again, I'm only limited by my own imagination of what I can get done with this rope. I can smack it all over the sides of his body. I can rope his feet with it. I can run it under his tail if he'd allow me. I can walk around. I can drag something really light with it. Just anything to get him used to it. I'm not a professional roper, but I think if this horse went on to a professional roper, they would appreciate that this horse was okay with the rope. Does that make sense? We're just trying to expose them to everything we can expose them to as a colt starter and giving this horse a good foundation to go on with the rest of his life. And here I drag around the rope just a little bit as I coil it up. He needs to experience it being coiled up from behind him and feeling that and seeing it out of his right eye, that rope kind of drag along and swing along as I recoil it back up. And that's all good things for him to learn. And, he's resting right now, and I'm sure he appreciates the rest. And it's a warm day, and he probably is pretty happy to just stand there and let me play with the rope, and he really doesn't have to do anything, and it's not about him. So I'm going to go walk over to the gate here and put the rope back up on the gate. And I did practice opening and closing the gate on this ride, but unfortunately the pivot lost me, so I apologize for that. And then the next ride, I will show you guys how I work the gate in ride 5. So stick around, and I appreciate you guys spending your time with me and watching me. Share this with your friends. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you like this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys spending your time with me. And stay tuned. We're going to keep on rolling with Shooter on ride 5 in the next video.